All right, 99. Episode 99 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Can you believe it? We are almost there. We're one away from 100. I got a special one coming for you on episode 100. I'm going to record it with my kids. I've been talking about that for a little while now. We'll see how it goes. My kids are pretty awesome. I think it'll work out. But regardless, what a cool moment to be able to share with them. And a promise I made them within the first 10 episodes of the podcast. They asked to come on the show, and I said, you know what? Let me get to episode 100 so I can host you properly. And so I'm excited about that. Episode 99, however, that's got Liz Wilcox on it. She hung out with me today. She has me fired up. God, we talked about the 90s. We talked about Nsync. We talked about RVs and poop and email marketing and parenting and finding balance. And she's authentic and an original thinker. Fun guest to have on the show. And I look forward to connecting with her and staying in touch with her. She could not be more fantastic. Check her out at lizwilcox.com. While you're listening, why don't you also go to fewillhunt.com. Check out their awesome apparel. You guys hear me talking about it all the time. Hey, save 15% off with the code JBP. I'm just telling these aren't generic tube cut t-shirts. Their clothes are high quality. The messages are outstanding. The price point is just right with that discount code JBP at checkout. So go to fewillhunt.com and just peruse. Think about your friends. Think about your family. Maybe there's some things in there that they might want. Fewillhunt.com. Also, as always, the fine folks at fellowshipbrand.com want you to save 10% with the code JBP when you buy tattoo balm, beard oil, other products that they have, and more. Few Will Hunt, Fellowship Brand have been fantastic to support the show, and it would be awesome if you supported them as well. Without further ado, enjoy my guest, my new friend, Liz Wilcox. All right. Welcome to the show. Got another great one for you today. Diving into the wonderful world of email marketing with Liz Wilcox. She helps companies write emails easily using her processes. She helps folks increase sales, build brands, connects with customers, and she's here to share some knowledge on the show today. Liz, welcome.
What's up? I'm so excited. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
All right. Couple things. When we anchor it, if you're listening, I'm going to call out some stuff here because one, I see an Nsync poster right behind you and I have to address it immediately. What's going on with Nsync?
Nsync is the best boy band of all time, and I refuse to let time forget that. I'm going to move my camera for Jake. If you're watching or listening to the podcast, you can see I actually have 3 Nsync posters right here. I just moved my desk, but this used to be the background. So I've got the like very 90s poster. I've got the no strings attached era, and I've got celebrity over here. And it's fun. It's part of, who I am. It's something that I decided I wanted to bring into the brand because, when you can create nostalgia with your potential customers, just like Jake just said, I have to talk about this immediately. You make that immediate connection and suddenly like the small talk isn't awkward anymore. Like you're off to the races. So why not have fun with it while like being strategic, right?
I love it. What's the favorite Nsync song?
My favorite Nsync song is I Thought She Knew. It's an a cappella version. It's actually was like written by the lady that did like all their song arrangements, and she wrote it for herself. And then Nsync came to be. It was like the first song they ever sang together. It was on their second album. And if you ask every Nsync member what their favorite song is, it's that one too. Because at their core, they always said we're a singing group. Like we got together to sing, and that highlights all their voices in like the perfect accompaniment. I can never say it right.
Oh yeah. No, I remember because I was a kid when Nsync was kind of like showing up on the scene. I remember the big Disney special like launch thing that they did that kind of like, accelerated their growth. And then all of a sudden you couldn't look anywhere without hearing Nsync. And, I caught myself, they would show up. I had a lot of like heavy metal tracks and rock tracks when I was mowing lawns growing up, but I'd mix some Nsync and some Christina Aguilera and some other stuff in there. So I'm like, I'm mowing lawns. I'm like, every little thing.
All of a sudden, yeah, all of a sudden Jake is a genie in a bottle.
Oh yeah. Well, 100%. Oh man, I had some hip movement when I was mowing, listening to Genie in a Bottle. Like I had to get down. So, I do have obviously Christina Aguilera is phenomenal, but going back to Nsync, it's a fun time. It's the music has got emotion and levity and all that. I think we need a lot more of that right now. Songs about like love and all the good stuff.
Yeah, just having a good time. And when people see the Nsync poster, like, Jake is displaying right now, people are like, oh, it takes me back to a time. Even if you didn't listen to Nsync, it takes you back to that time where things, hopefully, we're a little simpler, we're just mowing lawns, having a good time. We're going to get off work. We got $20 cash in hand. We're going to do the thing,
Oh, yeah.
It's just a fun time. And for me, I talk about email. Email is very technical, slightly boring. It's very not sexy. So if we can if we can get the ball rolling with something else first, so you're feeling good to talk about email later, that's good in my book.
I love it. And then, obviously you can't go out to your website without a deep appreciation for the 90s. It's got a 90s feel to it. Obviously you dress in kind of this, nostalgic 90s feel. Unpack that for me a little bit too.
Yeah. So again, it's just all about having fun. And this is my third business. I used to have an RV travel site, and then I had an RV digital summit business as well. And part of, as I grew those businesses, I always tried to have as much fun as possible. But I realized my customer base were men in their 60s. Like I would never talk about Nsync with them, or, I'm wearing a headband right now and like an American flag shirt. I was famous for like wearing the American flag around them. And, people really got into it. And so when I started the email marketing thing, I was like, okay, what is my flavor? Not like putting my flavor on someone else. Like, I'm just going to come out with, as much Liz Wilcox as there ever could be. And, the right people will pick it up. And so with my website, I really wanted it to have that fun, fresh feel. And I did a training a couple of weeks ago, and the last question they said, Liz, do you actually dress like this? Or are you just dressed up, like for the, because it's branded. Yeah. I said, oh no, this is 100% me. This is, I just got dressed, came downstairs, didn't have to think too much about it. And I remember I like stood up, I had like Day of the Dead leggings on and like, knee-high socks. I was like, no, this is just, I've been up since 4 a.m. This is just how I'm dressed. And, I wanted my website to really, really reflect that part of, who I am, how much like fun and color that I put into life, because especially with email, like if it's not fun and colorful, nobody's doing it. Like it's boring. Right.
Yeah. And I think you're pulling on a really interesting thread here. Something that I've struggled with is just being really authentic, like really owning who you are in the space. I think sometimes people have this like business persona and they have this like personal life persona. And it's like, why just like be exactly who you are and enjoy that. Right. And bring other people into that space with you. So I love what you've got going on there. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, like I said, this is my third business. So I had a couple tries, and when it boils it down, like what Jake just said, like I just wanted to build a business where I belonged, right? Yeah. It wasn't like I was trying to do something else. So this will open an entire can of worms. But my very first book was my very first digital product was a book about poop. I actually don't like to talk about poop, but suddenly I became this RV poop lady. Like I would get recognized at campgrounds and people thought it was just so funny. And I just leaned, like I like humor. So it was a humor joke, but it was like too far to the left for my personality. And so I remember I went to a conference and they said, is there, you're getting hyped, right? And they hand you the mic, like, what do you declare? What are you going to do when you get out of here today? And I was like, I don't want to be the RV poop lady anymore. And, a couple months later, I actually sold that business. But it's because I didn't feel like I belonged. I felt like people knew me for the wrong thing. I was like, I actually have a degree in I have a master's degree in leadership. Like, I don't want to make poop jokes anymore.
Yeah. Well, hold on, because we got to go back to the first
Sure, we
business
do.
here, because you can't say, "Oh yeah, I wrote a book about poop," and then like we're not going to skate by that. We're gonna go back
And then
peel that
and then
back a
suddenly
little
we're
bit.
talking about open rates.
Yeah. Okay. One, I I don't even know where to begin with this. What prompted the book about poop? Like, help me understand.
Yeah, this is so you listen to podcasts, you go to webinars, and everyone tells you if you want to build a business, create your own product, right? Especially an online business. You make the most money. Sure, you can get money from ads, sponsors, but if you have your own product, like, that's the way to go. And I'd started this RV blog as a business, but I was kind of all over the place. I didn't know what the heck to do. I wasn't even traveling at the time. I just knew I wanted a business. And so about 6 months in, I had been building my email list. I'd been building a little bit of a social following. And I just wrote to them and I said, I'm all over the place. Why do you follow me? Sometimes I'm talking about motherhood. Sometimes I'm, cracking jokes. Sometimes I'm sharing, my RV dream. And they said, well, Liz, you're really funny and you can tell a good story. That was, the gist of what I got. And so I was driving, a couple days later and I thought, okay, funny, tell a good story. I should create a book, like a funny book, like a book with funny stories. And so if you don't know anything about RV life, you carry your sewage with you. There's something called the black tank underneath, and that's where your sewage goes. And I love alliteration. So I was like, Tales from the Black Tank, a collection of hilariously crappy RV stories. And so, I sent out a second email. Hey, this is what you told me. This is my idea. Will you buy it? And I had a few sales that day. I went to canva.com. I, created the book. I got some other people in on it. And within the first 90 days, I had made $7,000 and it got picked up by an international sponsor. But it was because I asked people, what do you want from me? And then I went out and created it. I never would have come up with that idea on my own. Just like, I don't like to talk about that stuff, but that's what people loved. And I wanted a business. So that's what I used to jumpstart it.
That is such an important point of going out, asking the question. That's a hard question to ask sometimes, is why do you follow me? Like, what do you like about me? Like, why are you here in my space consuming the content that I'm creating? Like, help me understand. And then they tell you, and then it's your responsibility to act. And you sure did. Tales from the Black Tank. How long was the book? I'm gonna have to go buy this now.
I think it was like 10 chapters, and then I had a bonus edition with a couple extra chapters to teach you how to make your own toilet. I just remembered that for the first time in years. You can Google it, pause the podcast, Google it, you'll see my face, and suddenly the last 10 minutes will make all the sense in the world to you.
So then you do Tales from the Black Tank. You go to one of these conferences, you proclaim, like, I'm not going to be the poop lady anymore. And then what?
So I did Tales from the Black Tank. I made other products. And around the same time as, I'm proclaiming no more poop, right? I actually had launched a digital course with that RV travel site, and I had 141 people on the wait list. And then I did, a typical Monday through Friday open close cart, and I made 141 sales. So 100% conversion rate. I go to this conference, I, declare this, and everyone's like, well, what's going on in your business now? And I tell them about this crazy course rate, and they're like, that's impossible. No way you did that. And I did, I was just a lady in an RV. I didn't know average conversion rates. I was just trying, throwing stuff out and seeing what got picked up. And that's when I realized, I had been working for 3 years. I had built this crazy strong email list. I had another business with similar results. And that's when I knew like, oh, I need to be teaching people this email thing, because apparently this is outrageous. To me, it was just expected. I didn't know about conversion rates. I just thought, oh, somebody gets on the wait list, you should do as much as possible to try to convert them, right?
Yeah.
That made sense to me. And in my head, I thought of it like, oh, they're in line waiting to buy, right? So I sold that business. I went all in on the email marketing. That was like December 2019. And I've just been plugging away ever since. I now run a membership site, kind of like I call it the Netflix of email marketing. You can go in, binge watch a bunch of stuff, pick out templates to use. I've got over 1,000 members in there. And now I'm talking to you, Jake.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm in good company right now because I got some email questions, right?
Okay, great.
The first thing is it's as a business owner, myself, I struggle when I look at all the different technology platforms that you could use to be the vehicle of delivering your emails. You got things like MailChimp or ConvertKit, or, there's a whole plethora of things. How much does that really matter? And what do you look at? How do you advise folks like in that space?
Yeah. If you're a really small business, if you're starting out, I always say like pick something that's free or has a freemium. You have to pay once you reach a certain point. I don't think it really matters other than you just commit to doing the thing, right? It's not like, oh, Facebook versus Instagram. Like it doesn't matter. Just pick one, right? And just go all in. So it's the same with the technology. I would say go to YouTube and actually watch like behind the scenes, like over the shoulder videos, and see what makes sense for your brain and then pick. But I would actually, if you're really, really struggling, I would set a timer for like 20 minutes and do that, because you could spend months digging into, like Jake just mentioned, only two. There's hundreds of them, and you can really go down a rabbit hole. So if that's your personality, like set a timer, just pick one. Personally, I use ConvertKit. I think it's really good value for what you get, and they're building out new features, which makes it really cool because as my business grows, it seems ConvertKit is growing. But if you're just starting out, pretty much anything will do, and you don't need to spend a lot of money on it.
What's the mistake that most people make when they start taking on the task of blasting out emails? Like, what is the thing that you're like, no, don't do that? Like anything that stands out?
Yeah, stop listening to everyone. Stop listening. Like for me, a lot of email marketers will tell you to tell stories every single week. You've got to tell a story. Nobody cares that much about you. No, like unless you are a copywriter where it is your job to teach people how to tell stories, that is not very good advice. So instead of telling stories, your newsletter, the way you email should just look like this, very simple. And just keep in mind, if it takes you longer than 20 minutes, you're really overthinking it. So, the greeting, like, hey, Jake, then a personal update. Instead of telling a story, just give a personal update, like, what you had for breakfast, right? Or what the weather's like. You went for a walk right before, sitting down to write this email. Just something that shows off a little bit of your personality, a little bit of your life, and then segue into whatever the heck you actually have to say, right? And by segue, I mean all caps, anyway, ... What I really want to talk about is my new podcast episode, our new feature on the software. We just onboarded a new customer service rep, blah, blah, whatever it is you actually have to say that week, just put it in there, thank them for being on your email list, tell them to have a good week, whatever, and then get out of there. You don't have to tell a story with a hook and all this stuff. Like, sure, stories connect. I've told you several, one of them I regret already. But that is true. They connect, but you only need them like when you really, really, really want to connect. You just you can just have that personal touch point, that personal update, segue into the content. If you don't have time to write a story, your people don't have time to read them. And if you're a bad storyteller, you are literally training people not to open your emails.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking about like open rates and those things like that, I think One of the things that folks struggle with is just going straight to the quote other box or the junk box when they send emails out to folks. Is there that's a tough nut to crack. I mean, how is that based on connection? Do you have to like purposely get people to put you in their primary inbox, or like any thoughts around that?
All the thoughts. Yeah. So when you land in spam or, promotions or something, it's a lot of factors, but basically I the way I look at it is there are email gods, and that's, I say, like, oh, you have to please the email gods or the internet gods. And so the internet gods are, all those spiders, all that tech stuff we could never understand, that says, okay, Jake goes into the inbox, Liz is clearly spamming people or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot at the time of this recording. It's March 2022, and there's a lot going on in the internet space with the internet gods, email, all that is making it even more complicated. But in general, you just want to think of like pleasing the internet gods or having a good like email credit score. You have to build a reputation up, and with that reputation comes getting into the inbox. Now, sometimes you will go into promotions if you are selling something, but that's correct. You are actually promoting something. So it would make sense to go to the promotions tab. But in order to get to their inbox, you just have to create a good credit score. So number one, you have to make sure your list is clean often. So if you have a list that's 5 years old and you've never deleted anyone from it, your list is really unhealthy. And if you've got an email, like if you have an email open rate of 10%, that means 90% of your people don't care. So that when, let's say that's my email list, 90% of the people aren't opening, Jake gets onto my email list. The internet gods think 90% of my people don't care. So they're going to think Jake doesn't care either. Boom, I'm in the spam folder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it calculates all of that.
Yes. Yes. So basically, every time you send an email, the internet gods, quote unquote, are taking note, and that's affecting your credit score, your deliverability rate. Yeah. And so that's why, like, if you logged into ConvertKit, MailChimp, any of those, it will tell you how many emails you sent. And it'll say, like, mine, I think says like 200,000, because it's calculating each. If I send 100 calculations, who opened it, who clicked on it, all that, right? And so what you want to do is cold scrub your list. So anyone that's cold, anyone that hasn't opened in 30, 60, or 90 days, it's up to you. You want to remove them from your list. Of course, you can have a sequence to try to re-engage them. If you have questions about that, it's technical. We shouldn't get into it. You can just email me. We'll put in the show notes something.
Yeah.
But you should do something to get them off your list. If that seems scary, don't worry. You can export the file. You can still have them, but you cannot keep sending them emails, because that's signaling to the internet gods that you are spamming people. And then all your new people will go into spam. So the second thing, like, how can we combat that? Number one is just build a foundation. So in that welcome sequence, in that onboarding sequence, when Jake comes onto Liz's email list, I do something very strategic to make sure I get into the inbox, right? Every email has 3 jobs: get it seen, number one; number 2, get it open; number 3, get the person to take action. So if I'm scrubbing my list, I'm getting it seen. I'm doing all I can to get it into the inbox. When Jake opens it, of course, I run him through a few emails to get him to reply. Now, even if you have a list of 100, 200,000 people, this is still worth your while, because chances are you want it to get to 500,000, and chances are your credit score is probably really low. So you need to get that up. And so it can just be something very simple. Ask a yes or no question. Like for me, it would be, do you have an email list yet? Hit reply, yes or no. That person immediately knows the answer and can hit reply very quickly. It has to be a yes or no question. It can't be like, how do you feel about email? Or, what's the size of your list? Anything that they have to think more than half a second about, they're probably not going to reply to you. They don't know you yet. But a yes or no question is going to get them to reply. Also, a couple emails later, I do something like, I set newsletter expectations. So I'm telling Jake, hey, you're on my list now. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you, tons of advice about email. I'm going to offer free and paid resources. Ding, ding, ding. If you learn nothing else from Liz, write that down. Free and paid resources. You got to put that in an email somewhere so they know you're a business. Number 3, every Tuesday, I'm going to email you. So when Tuesday rolls around, Jake sees my email. In the back of his head, he's like, oh yeah, I read that she was going to. Now she did it. Now I trust her, right? She did something she said she was going to do. And then in that newsletter with the expectations, I say, does this sound good? Hit reply with, for me, Brandon, too legit to quit. So I know you're in. I get those every single day. And it's just a way of seeing who's opening the emails, keeping track of that, and getting me into the inbox. Because if somebody replies, again, that's signaling to the internet gods like, oh, Jake replied too legit to quit. The next time Liz emails him, I'm putting it right into the inbox. And then, when Justin Timberlake joins the next day, oh, well, Jake opened, so this must be important to Justin too. So I'm gonna put Liz into Justin's inbox. Is that making sense?
It is. It's
Cool.
It's making perfect sense. I love the too legit to quit, by the way, the MC Hammer reference. Like, God, you're just branded 90s.
Yeah, it's super fun. If that's not you, just type I'm in, like just, literally say, hit reply with I'm in. So I know, we're on the same page, whatever.
Yeah. So we're pleasing the internet or the email gods. We're making it easy to engage with folks, asking them straightforward questions just to make sure that there's some engagement there. There's some mutual interest, right? We don't want to send emails to folks who don't want emails sent to them. It doesn't benefit you, doesn't benefit them, right?
Yeah, 100%. You pay for your list. If they're not with the expectations too, that email is going to get more unsubscribes than normal, but that's okay. Because those people are like, oh, well, I'm not really that interested that you're going to send me something every Tuesday. Like I'm out, and that's good.
So then retention, what's your thoughts around, serving the list or keeping the list engaged or frequency? I mean, that's the scary thing when you sit down is like, do I send one a day? Do I send one a week? Do I send one a month? How do I know? Like, how do I know what my audience wants? How do I serve my list?
Yeah, so I put it on the screen, but let me move myself
Well,
here.
that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. So I follow something called the email staircase. This is my framework. So first you've got a follower, right? You get them on your email list, then you turn them into a friend. And then basically you have an email list full of friends where, like I said way earlier, you can basically just ask them what they want and turn them into customers. And so in order to be a friend, you only have to do 3 things. Number 1, just invest your time into them. So for me, I'm constantly reading about email, reading about those deliverability rates, credit scores, the email gods. I'm investing my time in that so I can explain it simply to you, right? Like it is a complicated process, but I'm investing time to explain it simply to you. And, when I say a story like I just did, that's very apparent. Like, whoa, this lady knows what she's talking about, right? Number 2, share in a relatable way. The same way at the top of the hour, I said, I would never in my RV days talk about, JC Chazet and Justin Timberlake. That wouldn't be relatable to my audience of people in their 60s, right? I was talking about the Grateful Dead or something.
Yeah.
So share in a relatable way, whether your emailing frequency is every single day, every week, twice a month, monthly, whatever feels comfortable for you to start. As long as it's clear that you're investing your time and you're sharing in a relatable way, like the frequency isn't that important. And then number 3, which segues into that, stay top of mind. Of course, just pick a time, but it's more important about the investing and sharing. It will become easier to stay top of mind, even if you don't want to write an email every day or once a week seems scary. If you just get started with, oh, I'm going to email you, the first Tuesday of every month, and then, you can go from there. But as far as what's in the newsletter, I think we talked a little bit about that, sharing a little bit of that personal update, right? Like, hey, I took my dog for a walk right before I sat down to email you, I've got my Mountain Dew here, I'm ready to share. Suddenly, I have a dog and I drink Mountain Dew without me having to tell you a story, right? And then we're off to the races with the value there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. They get to, you just kind of showing a little bit of your personality in there to keep that friend style connection. And then providing value, right? I mean, that's what it sounds like. It's just like, what's valuable to this audience? How did you distill down this information? It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think that that's my trouble when I sit down to do these things is I want to write like a dissertation. I want to write like a really interesting short story or a novel or something along those lines where people are just like, ooh, Jake has said something really interesting, but nobody's going to sit down and read 20 pages of my Mustangs, I guess.
Yeah. You've got to, what do they say? Like clip your little darlings or whatever. Now, if you are a natural storyteller, like go ahead and tell those stories if that's what you want your brand to be, but it doesn't have to be that way every single time you email. Also, variation works really well, right? Like if people want to feel comfortable and know like what they're getting with you, but as far as emails go, you can also vary it. Like I wrote a much longer email last week and I just thought this morning, like, oh, I think my next newsletter is only going to be like 100 words and it's just going to be like one tip and I'm out, right? So that varying keeps it exciting, keeps people engaged, versus, like I said earlier about, the same thing every single week, the same long story, whatever, that's going to train someone like they're so familiar with it that, oh, well, I don't need that right now. I already know what's inside. I'm going to open that later. And we all know later means never, because once it gets to page 2, like who's going there, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's got money in it or you owe money, nobody's going to page 2. Nobody's typing in your name.
100%. So reflect a little bit on building out this particular business where you're coaching in groups or one-on-one, or how do people work with you? Help me understand a little bit that about that. And then again, let's reflect on what it's been like growing that business.
Yeah, so I started out with 2 wheelhouses of the business. This is so fun. Thank you for asking. It was copywriting services. I wrote emails for you, sales pages, things like that. If you go to my website, you'll see why people paid me to do that. It's really fun. And then the other side was building out these digital products for email marketing to teach people, do trainings, things like that. So, of course, if you've ever been in any type of business, services always makes money really quickly. Like people will, there's always somebody out there that needs your gift and they're willing to pay. And so I gave myself actually 2 years. I said, okay, I'm only going to do copywriting services for 2 years to fund the digital product side, where eventually I'm just doing podcasts, doing trainings, and just building the email list and selling my products. I'm going to give myself 2 years to do that. And so I started with the copywriting. I used to do, they call them day rates. So you'd hire me for a day. I'd write as much as freaking possible for you. And then, you walk away with it, you implement it. And that was fun. And the first year I did a lot of copywriting. I started building my email list. I did a couple digital summits, built a couple products. Things were going well. And then in 2021, it was that, we just marked the first year anniversary, right? And it was February 2021. And I said, I had just signed $20,000 in contract work for my copywriting services. And at first it felt really good. I grew up pretty darn poor. I'm a single mom. I support my family with this business. And I also support my mother financially, who lives 1,000 miles away. So 2 households. And so I was feeling relieved, like, okay, $20,000, that's going to, last me X amount of months. And I don't have to worry about anyone going hungry or being homeless, right? Like that's my brain.
Yeah, peace of mind.
Yes. And so, but then I was sitting down, I was building my email list. I had about 800 people on the email list at the time. And I was like, okay, but these are the people that I really love. The email thing, talking about this email theory, doing trainings, that's what I really, really love. And there was something inside of me that was like, just so stressed. Like this $20,000 is going to take me from building LizWilcox.com. I'm building other people's businesses, right? But this email list, I know this is where it's at. I know these are the people I want to talk to. These are the people I want to serve. Because like I said, I grew up poor. And when I learned I could just literally like write something up, hit send on a mouse and make money, I was like, oh my gosh, move over Jeff Bezos. Like it's going down. Like I wanted everyone in on it because I grew up poor. If you grow up that way, it's like, oh, well, to get out of it, you just have to have 2 jobs. You just have to eat hot dogs for 10 years or ramen noodle, But then I was like, the world opened up to me. I'm like, actually, I can just send emails instead. Like, okay, let's do this. So I wanted other people in on it. And so I thought to myself, like, okay, Liz, are you going to talk about all this stuff? Are you going to talk about helping those other people and helping yourself with recurring revenue? Or are you going to do it? Like, are you going to actually do it? So I sat down, wrote my newsletter. I said, hey, today is the day I have had this idea. I'm going to launch a membership site. It's going to be weekly newsletters, like all those things I was telling you to put in. I was like, I'm just going to write it for you. I know it's so hard to come up from scratch. I'm going to write actual templates, not swipe files that are, written for Liz. And you give me $9 a month. I'm going to do this every single week. I threw in some other stuff. I had 30 people sign up right away. I had 100 people in the first 30 days. I had 1,000 people in the first year. And as of right now, I'm about to launch the annual rate sale. And I'm expecting like another just in the next couple weeks. And so that has catapulted my success, my notoriety, and it allowed me to, at the end of 2021, to hit my goal of retiring those services. I saved up an entire year's salary for myself. So I don't even have to stress about, oh my gosh, can I pay my mom's electricity this month or, whatever. And now I'm just, talking to people like you, doing trainings. I think I was on over 70 podcasts last year, or podcasts or like digital summits. This year, I'm probably set to surpass it. And I'm not even like actively promoting myself anymore. So yeah, I built the machine and it's running now. Thank you for asking.
That's a beautiful thing. Wow. So what's the longer term? Because obviously you think strategically, obviously you're thinking long term. I want to know what that looks like for your business.
Yeah. I've purposely tried to slow down because I have this brain that, thinks 10 years into the future. Right.
Yeah.
But this year it's all about just building out the membership site. Right now, my goal is to get 10,000 people in the next couple of years. And, just have $1 million business from a $9 offer. That just sounds like an awesome brag.
Yeah.
And I can help 10,000 people a month, like for $9. That's the dream. Because when I started my business, I had no money to invest. People say, oh, well, if they don't invest in your high ticket stuff, then they're just not invested in themselves. And it's like, well, yeah, I am, but my bank account tells me I'm not.
Yeah.
So it feels really good. And so just to continue that legacy and that vision for things. Also, I want to start doing more like digital events. My second business was a digital event business. I want to start doing that for email and business, but really teaching people and also like holding the vision for people and helping them do that to build a business that they belong in, to, like we said at the very beginning, to just show up as themselves and to stop listening to a bunch of other people and tune into themselves and figure out what kind of business it really is. That would be really, really dope.
I love it. Now you said that you were, how old's your one child?
My daughter is 7 years old.
7 years old. I got an 8-year-old son. So I'm in a similar, and at least in a little bit of a similar boat. I love talking about parenting on this podcast as well. As far as being an entrepreneur and working from home, I assume. How has that been? How's the flow been with your daughter, with managing that, like your perspective over time, how that's maybe changed a little bit? I'm just so interested in that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So when I started my business, I lived in 200 square feet and she was a toddler. And
Whoa,
so she
whoa.
really
200 square feet is not,
I
that's not a lot.
that's my desk now. My
Yeah.
desk is like over 5 feet long now.
Yeah.
So I've spread out, y'all. I've up leveled here. So
Yeah.
I lived in an RV. I bought the
Oh,
RV. I was like, whoa, we could travel in this thing. Like, I'm gonna start a blog so I can make money and travel. And so she just kind of always grew up with me working, doing that kind of stuff. And about a year and a half ago, we moved we moved out of the RV, we moved into a townhouse. And for me, it's been amazing. I have so much more structure. When I was in my RV, it was, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Everything that I created was in the margins in those first two businesses. I remember hosting my first digital summit in a campground with terrible Wi-Fi. I don't know. We had over 1,000 people attending. I can't, like, you guys, you can do anything. You really can. If you just believe it hard enough and you get people in on your belief, you can do anything. And I remember the second time I went live for my digital summit, my daughter came up and was like, Mom, will you make me a sandwich? I had over 1,000 people watching. And this was pre-COVID. Like, this was not kosher back then. Like now it's like, oh, whatever, right? And so I remember I hosted a mastermind one time and she mooned them and people were paying me for this call. And, when you live in 200 square feet, you just roll with it, right? So nowadays we're in the townhouse. It's much more structured. She's in elementary school. And so I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I work for 2 hours. And then I wake her up, put her on the school bus, come home, and I work for about 6 more hours. So I get that full 8 hours.
yeah.
And it's worked really well. It's been awesome that I did all that the same way as I saved up money and now I retired my services. It's awesome to see everything that I built in the margins running for me now so that I can take time off when she gets off school. Like, I have to take her to the dentist today. It's no problem, but it's really about, I've structured my days so that I can do that. I'm not always perfect. Another tip is I have the iPhone. So at 3 o'clock, all my apps turn off for 2 hours to make sure I'm actually present, because I'm sending 2:59, I'm sending emails, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, the kid's about to get home. What's the last minute thing? But then it immediately shuts off when she gets home. So I can't even do the follow-up. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's great tips there. One, it is possible to make the time, right? It's possible to carve that time out. You just have to be disciplined. Sounds like you're getting up bright and early in the morning, but you're making time for things that are important in the afternoon. And that's the thing, that work-life flow or balance, or however people like to describe it. I think that gets missed sometimes in that kind of hustle and grind type, lifestyle where you're working every day and you're building something that you're passionate about, and missing out on those close to you. And so I'm so glad that you've got a really cool system out there as well to spend time with your kiddo.
Yeah, thanks. One of my goals is to only work like during the regular school calendar. So to take summers off, and I took all Christmas break off. I'm hoping to take off half of spring break, but that's a goal. Or I could, I think when she's like 10 or 11, go back into the RV and just homeschool her and us travel again. She's dying to travel. She traveled her whole life, like the first 4 or 5 years of her life. And now I still travel a lot for work and she stays home and she is getting bitter. I
Oh
brought
yeah.
her, speaking of like work-life balance, I had a day with my business coaches. We all flew into Orlando. It was just me, and I have two business coaches that work together with me. And she came with me and she watched me the whole day, like map out. I've got it all behind me, like map out the entire year. And so like it's really important for her to see me working and see me like building this business that I belong in, having fun with it, doing work that isn't hard, like I don't think you should have to trade money for your life,
Yeah.
and so it's really important for me to instill that in her. Back in the day, I hosted an in-person event, and she was the only person. I was the youngest person aside from her. Like I said, my audience were in their 60s. So we were the only two people like under the age of 45. And she was with me as I was hosting the entire event. People helped me with her. Like I didn't even fly in a babysitter or anything. And it was just really cool. So that's one thing that's always been really important, is to show her like, you can make money doing what you love. Like, let me show you how.
What a beautiful thing. Let's end on that. That's a beautiful sentiment. That's an important message for any parents out there who, especially if you're an entrepreneur, it can be stressful, it can be frustrating, and the energy and the enthusiasm that you show and you model that behavior, and the next generation gets to see it and think about the world of possibilities, especially with a interesting mom like you, Liz, being able to travel the country and just expose your daughter to so many cool and interesting things. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jake. I've had a great time.
Hey, so where's the best place to connect with you, find you, get some self-serve resources, and potentially reach out?
Yeah, of course. I'm an email marketer. I want you on my email list. That's the best place. All these things I've been talking about, you can see it live in action when you sign up. Of course, I'm going to give you some free stuff too. You just go to lizwilcox.com. In the top right-hand corner, there's a hot pink button. It says free email swipes. You're going to get an entire welcome sequence to show you exactly what I mean when I was talking about 30 minutes ago. You're going to get some newsletter examples, so you can see how that actually works in the real world. And then you're going to get 52 subject lines, so you never even have to come up with an idea on your own. All that at lizwilcox.com, that hot pink button.
That's awesome. And if you're listening to the podcast and you run a business or you work in a business that needs some help around email, that's why Liz is here to provide that perspective. So go check out that site and get going on this. I know I personally am paying mind to it as well. I need to get a lot better about emails. I've been very inconsistent with my listeners. And so, Liz, I want to thank you again for your time, your energy, everything that you bring to the table, and looking forward to hopefully having you on the podcast again in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Jake.
All right, cheers.